Go ahead and record. And so today we're going to do the basically the unit review for the last 3 units. Hopefully, we'll see how this goes. So today we'll start with analyzing social studies, events, and ideas. And I will call you guys to answer questions as we go along here, just like yesterday. So let's go ahead and take a look. And just a refresher, that was a fairly short unit, but there was a lot going on there. So, of course, analyzing cause and effect, right? And analyzing events, processes, and ideas. So remember we talked just more recently in language arts about high-level and low-level processes, relating events and ideas. So we'll revisit all of that in this lesson, in this unit quiz. Can't hear me? Can everybody else hear me? Delasha says she can't hear me. I am not muted. Is everybody else?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Delasha, you might want to try to either...
So.
Okay, good. So yeah, Delasha, you might want to try to either restart your computer or your device and coming back, or just make sure you're not on mute yourself. Either way, but if you need to leave and come back or anything, of course I'll readmit you to the Zoom. Why am I? She can't hear me. Why am I saying that? Let me type her a message real quick. Hold on. This is for Delasha. Okay, maybe she got the idea there. Let's see. Don't want any technical issues today. Okay, Delasha, can you hear me now?
I can hear you through my phone, but I can't hear you through my computer. I don't know why.
Okay, well that's weird. Okay, but you're with us now. Okay, I was sitting there. I was trying to talk to you, just completely oblivious to the fact that you couldn't hear me. But yeah, so I was just mentioning maybe you need to restart your laptop or your computer or something like that. But if you can hear me now, that's good. So as I was saying, yeah, we'll try to call on everybody here as we go to answer some questions. So something else that we looked at in this unit, right? Correlations and causation. So the passage, again, with the Great Migration is something that we looked at earlier. So before 1910, most African Americans lived in the rural South. Starting in 1916, however, many African Americans began moving from rural areas to urban centers. By 1970, 80% of African Americans lived in cities, nearly half of which were in northern states. Historians call this decades-long event the Great Migration. Most African Americans were pursuing better economic opportunities. Large cities had more jobs to offer. People who moved to northern cities specifically, meanwhile, also hoped to escape the oppressive segregation laws that they had long suffered in the South. We're going to start talking about that stuff next week in a little more detail as well. White Southern elites were concerned about the Great Migration. If enough African Americans moved north, Southern industrialists would be left without labor support. To halt the loss of workers, some Southern elites attempted to address the complaints of African American workers. By 1954, the South saw improved race relations and a stronger job market. This triggered another smaller Great Migration event from northern to southern states as African Americans pursued a lower cost of living, closer to the families that they had previously left behind in the South. Okay, and our question then, which of the following, out of these 4 choices, is a correlation described by the passage. We'll start with Mariama. What do you think is a correlation between these two here?
Okay, 1 second. African American influence education is the American living the South is even the North is correlated. I think it's D.
D as in dog?
Yes, sir.
African Americans needing better jobs is correlated with African Americans moving to urban centers. That is correct. Yeah. So that's the correlation, right? Wanting better jobs, moving to urban centers. And as we discussed in those lessons also, right, correlation is not always imply causation. There's other reasons for that, right? When we talk about segregation laws and the treatment they're receiving in the South. But better jobs in the city, that's where they're going to move. So there's a correlation between those two. Yeah, correlating behavior. The passage suggests the same African Americans who were looking for better economic opportunities also moved to urban centers. Okay, and yes, the same passage on migration. So now, which of the following does not describe a possible cause and effect relationship? Delasha, can you answer that one for us? What is not a cause and effect relationship here?
Sorry, I'm in my phone, so I need to look at it.
Okay, can you not, is it hard to see?
It is not, but notice industries which is not. Is it a racial and economic factor improved in the South, so the African American returned?
So was that, did you say A?
I mean, C, racial and economic factor improved.
Okay, so it's B here. So it's Southern industrialists saw a labor shortage. Yeah, so many Northern African Americans returned to the South, right? So everything else that they're showing here is basically cause and effect, right? African Americans migrated north, so Southern industrialists saw a labor shortage, right? It triggered this labor shortage in the South when they moved out of the South. The third one there, racial and economic factors improved in the South. So that triggered the return of some African-American families when, race relations and economic conditions improved there. So the cause is, better situation in the South. The effect is they moved back. African-Americans needed better jobs, so they moved to urban centers where there were more jobs, right? Cause, better jobs, the effect, they moved. But that second one there, right? So Southern industrialists saw a labor shortage. That was actually, triggered by them leaving, not a cause and effect relationship between those two. When the Southern industrialists then improved the situation in the South, then that caused African Americans to return to the South. There was cause and effect there. So Southern industrialists. As it says, did create job openings. It wasn't the jobs alone that brought them back. Okay, and 3. So which of the following correlations is possibly a causation as well? So we also talked about, you can't be, you can't automatically imply that a correlation is causation, but there are oftentimes, significant, there's a solid enough pattern there that you can say that one is causing the other. So Nautica, I want you to take a look here. what is a possible causation in this situation here?
Oh, let me read the answers real quick. Southern employers try to address African American concerns, race relations, improve in the South.
That's your answer?
African Americans moved north to flee segregation when race relations improved some return. I think it's that one.
The first one there, A?
Yeah.
So it was the last one, D. It's Southern employers try to address African American concerns, race relations improving. And so there's an active, response there to the population leaving. So there is some causation there that they are trying to improve the situation to have their labor force return. African Americans moved north to flee segregation. When race relations improve, some return. So there's not a direct cause and effect there, right? There is the middleman is the industrialist, trying to improve the situation. Urban centers have more economic opportunities. Rural areas have fewer people and fewer jobs. Not a cause and effect type of situation there either. So here we go. All right. And so number 4. Okay, so which of the following events also represent a correlation? Okay, so we have 2 events happening. Which ones, right, are related, right? They're correlated. Levon, you want to take a look at our 4 choices here. What do you think is a correlation? A. So it's D, right? So what can be correlated is the fact that you see, the city releases a flash flood warning and you see an increase in car crashes, right? So those things are correlated. A dropout rate and the football team winning state, not really correlated. Coal mine closes and its workers laid off on the same day there's a fire near the mine, not correlated, right? The local police are looking for a missing boy. Local police also crack down on loitering. Not a strong correlation there. So here, though, right, correlations when 2 events are occurring at the same time, and likely for the same reason, right? So both of those in this case are going to be related. That one's a little thin because it doesn't really specify that those events are happening at the same time in that case. But that's the idea there, right? Flash flood warning. City also sees an increase in, I would say car accidents, people getting into high water and things like that, perhaps. Okay, now a new passage. Oh, and the Salem witch trials again, our favorite. So looking through this real quick here, brief refresher on the Salem witch trials. In 1692, in Salem, Massachusetts, a group of girls claimed to be possessed. The girls accused several women of being witches. Hearing that there were witches in the town, many townsfolk became upset. Arrest warrants were issued for the accused witches. As fear grew among the townsfolk, more and more women were accused of witchcraft. Town leaders set up a special court in Salem. This court tried people tried people accused of witchcraft. The first person they convicted was Bridget Bishop. She was hanged in June 1692. Many more convictions followed. By September, people were less upset about witches. They began to dislike the trials. Some people even spoke out about how the trials were handled. The court stopped, including Bridget Bishop. 19 people had already been executed. The Massachusetts General Court later said that Salem's court was illegal and that the witches were not guilty. Still, almost 20 people were dead, local families were hurt, and the memory of that remains today. That is legacy. So Mariama, let's take a look here. Which of those events took place first? Thinking about cause and effect here.
So it is. I think it's A.
A. Bridget Bishop is found guilty. So before that, the town leader set up the courts. Okay, so B there, right? That happened, and then they tried her. So that, in this case, is the first event in that scenario before they offered there. Yeah, but then everybody was, well, not everybody was tried, but they tried those women, executed 19 of them. And then, which of the following ideas is a principle demonstrated in this event? So remember when we talked about principles, the idea that sort of an encompassing idea, like say our ideas of all men created equal, right? And then we, you know, the purpose and the plan are related to that, you know, as far as we have the purpose of ensuring that. And then the plan to do that are, you know, our laws through the Constitution and the law and the rights that were guaranteed there. So, Delasha, go back to you. So, when it comes to Salem witch trial and what we have here, what is a principle demonstrated in this situation?
A court of law must be required that criminal charges be backed up by evidence, not claim of the supernatural.
Yes, a court of law must require that criminal charges be backed up by evidence, right? So not claims of the supernatural. That's a principle, and that's a principle that, you know, whether it's a supernatural event or anything else, in this country, we have due process. If you are accused of a crime, you have the right to defend yourself in a court of law. And, you know, each side presents evidence to your, to your case. So yes, that's a principle there. Yeah, justice is blind. They mean it must be rational, impartial, and not easily swayed by emotion. The Salem witch trials, all about fear, right? It was basically this fear that was running through town, and the solution was to just start basically hanging young women. These ridiculous trials that really presented no evidence, and yeah, so poor example of how a court should be conducted, certainly. And that's where we get this idea of a witch hunt when a group of people are attacking someone or something, and it's sometimes used erroneously. There are legitimate reasons why people are doing things, and other people will claim that it's a witch hunt, even though there are plenty of evidence that is being presented to contradict them. All right, last one here. So high level process we got here. Okay, so running for president, something else that we looked at before, right? Before declaring candidacy for president, the presidential hopeful must ensure that he or she meets the requirements of the office. So to qualify as a candidate for president, a person must be a natural-born citizen of the United States, 35 years of age or older, and must have lived in the U.S. for at least 14 years. Once these requirements are met, the candidate may begin their campaign for president. Traditionally, presidential candidates must first win the nomination of a political party. Candidates compete in primaries and caucuses across the country where voters will decide which of the party's candidates they prefer. The winning candidate becomes the official nominee, announced at the party's national convention. The nominee then selects a running mate. Once every party has an official nominee, the national campaign begins. Each party's candidate campaigns across the country to win the support of the general public. At the end of the national campaign comes the general election. Each voter selects the candidate that they prefer. When citizens cast a vote, however, they're actually voting for a group of representatives called electors. In the Electoral College, each state has a number of electors. Electors then vote on their constituents' behalf within the Electoral College. The first candidate to reach 270 electoral votes is declared the winner. And we will discuss that more in depth as well later. But as far as high level and low level processes go, and it's telling us here that this is a high level process, how do we know that? Levon, how do we know we have a high level process here? Is Levon here? All right, I think Nautica already put it up. Oh, so what do we do here? What is the, how do we know this is a high level process?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, no, Levon.
Oh, okay.
All right, she's reading. C, only a high level process would go into this much step-by-step detail. So that's kind of flipped. That would be a low level process that offers a lot of detail. So here, this process includes a second checklist within itself. So D is the correct answer, right? So we look at that, what do we do to run for president? Lots of steps underneath that. We know it's a high level process because we have these other checklists underneath it. First, you make sure you qualify. You meet the minimum requirements to run. Then you're nominated by you run against other candidates in your party, at least for the major parties. That's how it works for the Republican and Democrats. If you run for a smaller party, if there's no one challenging you, you might just get the nomination. If you're like the Green Party, or I think there are like libertarians that might have to, have like elections or something like that. But typically, whether one way or the other, you are nominated by your party. It just depends on how they do that. Of course, Republicans and Democrats, they have primary elections, right? These caucuses that are start in Iowa, I think. That's why they're so important, is because they're the first primaries. So that starts whittling down the candidates, basically, who has a legitimate shot at that point. But anyway, yeah, so there's multiple processes and lower level processes underneath the idea of a high level process of running for president. So here we go, submit that. Yeah, so it's made of a bunch of lower level processes. Since this process includes a checklist, another kind of process, it would be considered a high level process.
Congratulations. You've earned a perfect score on this unit.
Okay.
And I use the word earned because
here.
it's your hard work that made you successful.
And then on to working with data, right? So this next unit quiz, more about numbers, right? We looked at visual data, different types of charts, line graphs, bar graphs, pie charts. So moving past text, this is where we start talking about the difference between qualitative information, right, which is text, which is giving often the quality of something, whereas quantitative is typically numerical. So let's open that up and take a look here. Working with social studies data. Okay. All right. So the question they're asking is, which of the following does not represent quantitative data? Let's take a look at our passage here. So the city of Ranford is considering a request to build a new big box store within its city limits. So something else that we've seen before. The city has been growing at an unprecedented rate and is desperate for the greater commercial coverage that a big box store might provide. Currently, some citizens have to drive 30 or more minutes to reach a supermarket. Councilperson Andrew Espinoza, however, is reluctant to welcome a new big box store to the city. He feels that big box stores bring violent crime. Most of Espinoza's constituents agree. 51% of Espinoza's constituents responding to a one-question survey said that they were very concerned that big box stores might result in more violent crime. To prove his point, Councilperson Espinoza created a graph showing how violent crime has increased with each new big box store added to the city. And then remember our graph here. Oh my, look at that. Every time there's a new big box store open, the next year, crime goes up. So 10 new big box stores and crime goes up, to almost 500 reported crimes. So remember, we have our x-axis, which we probably going to talk about here too as well, right? Independent variables. And then a dependent variable usually goes along the y-axis up and down. But we did find out that this was a little fishy, right? Maybe these things are not necessarily that related. Maybe it has more to do with population increase. So anyway, looking here, Nautica, which of the following does not represent quantitative data?
Constitutes are reported very concerned.
Yep, right. That's qualitative data, because it's text driven, right? It's words. So that's your difference there. So everything else here will be quantitative data because it's numbers driven, right? Population is numbers driven. Crimes reported is numbers driven. The number of big box stores, that's numbers driven. But very concerned is giving the quality of the behavior or attitude of the constituents there. But the easiest way to remember the difference between qualitative and quantitative, qualitative deals with numbers. I'm sorry, quantitative deals with numbers. Qualitative deals with text, words. Okay, so let me take a look at our question here. So as the space age began, approximately how much of the labor force worked in the industrial sector? Okay, so short passage here. The graph below shows the way the labor force of the United States changed as America moved from the Industrial Revolution through the space age and into the information age. So we see 1790, the Industrial Revolution begins. Space age starts during the Cold War, 1957-ish, and into the information age where, the digital age starts to appear. Really the digital age kind of comes later, but the information age is really starting there around 1970. And so service jobs are represented in that gold color, industrial jobs with the red color, and the blue are agriculture. Okay, so that is not the easiest visualization of this type of data. I gotta admit, that's a little rough to discern to some degree. But looking at our question, and I can reopen that if we need to, as the space age began. So let's look at that one more time. 1957, so somewhere in, we'll say like 1960, all right? So 1960, the year 1960. How much of the labor force worked in the industrial sector? So, Mariama, what says you? How many people were working in the industrial sector there?
I think it's A, as the space age began between 10% and 47.
Between 10 and 47. So that was kind of my thinking. They say between 5 and 40. And I, yeah, like, you know, if you look at 1950, yeah, like that seems to be about 10 to 40. The problem here is that we're kind of estimating based on, you know, what it looks like in 1957. That's what I was saying. This is kind of hard to discern, right? It's hard to really nail down a exact number. But when we get to 1960, that probably is. And see, that's the thing too, is the way these numbers are, the values at 25, it's very difficult to sort of read that. So I'm not real happy with the visualization of the data here. But what they're saying is that's about 5% up to, and it's a little easier up here to see, that is probably about 40%. So yeah, as the space age began, we're looking at about 5 and 40% of labor force worked in the industrial, which, I mean, honestly, between 10 and 47%, you know, if we're talking about statistical data, margins of error, you know, you would probably still fall into that realm a little bit. But what it's saying here, right? So according to the passage, space age began 1957. So the graph doesn't have an entry for 1957, but it does have one for 1960. It's more than likely the labor force of 1957 looked very similar. So that's something that when it comes time to take a test, you'll want to keep in mind. If you're presented with something like a graph and they're asking you about a number in between, right, you're probably going to want to round up. So if it says, you know, 1957, and there's like, okay, I got 1950 or 1960, go with the higher number, right? 1960, you round up. If it was, they wanted to ask you something about 1954, you know, round down. If it's above 5 and above, round up. You know, 4 and below, round down. And then, you know, use your best judgment once you get to that point. And which of the following best describes the story that this graph seems to be telling? It is our different graph. So the graph, okay, so showing, the graph below shows the changing customer satisfaction with a product called New Widget. Widgets are just a theoretical product that like, you know, business classes use. It's just to represent a product, no specific product, but just for theory purposes, they always say widget. Between the years 2014 and 2017, the numbers are shown as a percentage of the total reports of customer satisfaction for that year. So the blue is unsatisfied, the red is neutral, the gold is satisfied. So starting here on our x-axis, 2014, we got about 40% that's neutral, maybe about 5% that is unsatisfied, and then probably about 55% that is satisfied. And then as we go along, we see a little decrease there in satisfaction. You can see by that line that they're drawing that it's a little bit of a diagonal, right? It's slanting down. Meanwhile, Neutral is also going down, and unsatisfied is creeping up. So less satisfaction of this new widget. So which of the following best describes the story that this graph seems to be telling? Delasha, what do you think here? What are we seeing? Delasha, are you there? Okay, you're there.
Yeah, I'm here, but I'm just like. It's not. I think it's B.
B?
Yeah.
Yeah. So over that 4-year span, we see fewer widget customers who were satisfied or neutral, right? We saw a slow decline there, and the rise of customers who were, unsatisfied. So yeah, B there tells a story, right? So looking at that data, we can draw some conclusions about what we're seeing. Okay, and then if the trend continues, right? So if we were to sort of extrapolate that information that we see here and looking, and we project that out to 2017. So what we have here, 1990, 2001, sort of weird increments there. So we have like 11 years or so between that one and then 8 years here. This is a different graph too. So this is below, U.S. census. This goes back to people living with their parents. Okay, so we probably should explain the data a little bit then. That's why it looks different. So the percent of young people aged 19 to 26 living at home with their parents for the years 1990, 2001, and 2009. Some experts believe that this graph shows how the 2008 financial crisis impacted young people. So 1990, so down here, our key says that, the red indicates that age group, 19 to 26, does not live with parents. So we have 67% in 1990 do not live with their parents. Blue, 33% live with their parents, right? 2001, it actually, the number living with their parents decreases, and the amount not living with their parents actually goes up 2%. And then it really flip-flops in 2009, or by 2009. So we have 58% living at home, 42% not living with their parents, right? So the numbers really invert there. So looking at the trend, if we're seeing a decline in children living away from home, Levon, if the trend continues, what percent of young people will live with their parents in 2017? So a quick look here. If we have 58% living at home in 2009, what could you project that it would look like in another 8 years? 23. So we're actually moving in the other direction. So it's going to be greater than 70. So, this is where, make sure you understand, if they're saying if the trend continues, so if it continues to where the amount of people ages 19 to 26 continue to move in with their parents, right? So it's a 58 here. So if that trend continues to go up, by 2017, we could see greater than 70%, right? We're already at 58%. With that type of rate change between 2001 and 2009, we could definitely see it continuing to increase, and it would probably be in that range. I don't think we actually made that in 2017. I think it did start to decline again because of improvements in the economy. So if the percentages of young people living with their parents continues, you could expect to see an increase between 2009, 2017 that was similar to what the graph shows between 2001 and 2009. But, this is really dependent on just that information that we have. You would have other numbers that you would want to use. You would have other information to make that type of prediction. An economist that was working on something like this, or some other type of demographer, or somebody does, a statistician, they're not going to look at that and go, oh, because we have this piece of information and this piece of information, we can project that this will occur. Right? We talked about central tendency, right? Having a lot of information available to you, so they would look at other things. Project on how the economy was going to do. Is there going to be a change in the housing market? Things like that would also affect that projection. But just based on those numbers alone, we could project that it would climb to perhaps 70%. Okay, number 5. So again, another graph that we saw. So here, this fictional city of River Clay conducted a study to determine its city's adoption of technology. The graph below shows the percentage of citizens who reported using the internet on a daily basis. The data suggests that older citizens are less inclined to use technology than their younger counterparts. So our variable on the bottom, right, x-axis, across the bottom, we have age, a category of less than 18, 19 to 35, 36 to 55 years old, 56 to 65, 66 plus. And then our y-axis going up and down, percent who report daily internet use, right? So if they're under 18, they're looking at over 75%, probably about 80% there with daily internet use. And then a slight dip in the next number, 1935, another little drop at 36.55, and then a significant drop between 56.65, and it continues with the 66 plus crowd. So the relationship between the variables shown in the graph, Nautica, what is the relationship here?
Hang on, let me read over the questions and then look at the graph one more time, okay?
No problem. You want to take a look at the graph again? That's cool.
Okay. Is the independent variable age and then causes a decrease in dependent variable and daily internet use?
The independent variable age correlates to a decrease in the dependent variable internet use. Yeah. So, right, we remember from our lesson, if you have a graph, bar graph, line graph, whatever it may be, the independent variable will usually be the one on the bottom running left to right, right? Mm-hmm. That's always the independent variable. I shouldn't say always, but that's pretty much a standard rule, right? Traditionally, it's always on the bottom, and then your dependent variable, right, is going to be on the side. So how they correlate? Well, what do we see as the age goes up, the internet use goes down. So yeah.
And like, what's the difference between that one and then the dependent variable age causes a decrease in the dependent variable daily internet? Sounds like the same, you know.
On which one? Like the graph before?
No, this like the answer, this one, and then the last one, the dependent variable age causes a decrease in the dependent variable daily internet use.
So
I mean, it sounds like the same.
As far as like, I'm not sure I understand. So with
the answer is this one, like A, right? The dependent variable is, but this one and then the D, the independent variable age causes a decrease in the dependent variable. I mean, like it sounds like the same, but I mean, like, what's the difference?
So
yeah,
the operative word in both of those, the correct answer is correlates, right?
Yeah.
The difference in the other answer, it says causes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so remember we talked about, so there's a correlation here between age and internet usage, but we can't say that the age causes the difference in internet use, right? So that's the rule there. Correlation does not imply causation. So yeah, good picking that out though. I'm glad. That's a good reminder there. So that is the difference. It's just that one word. Correlation, yeah, we can have a correlation between age and internet use, but we cannot say that one causes the other. All right. Does that clear it up?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Not a problem. Thanks for the question. Yeah, enough data to show causality. You know, you'd have to yeah, you'd have to just make sure that you have enough, you'd have to have more evidence there. Okay, and then which of the following would be a confounding variable that might call into question or confuse what the data seems to be showing? So this, right, is back to the big box stores crime thing, right? So the whole thing about the increase in big box stores show and, you know, this correlation between big box stores and the number of crimes. And then we talked about confounding. So what will complicate that idea, right? So there's got to be some different information there. What is going to complicate it? Mary Amma, what could call into question this data?
Can I please see the graph one more time?
Sure thing. Graph.
Okay. It's okay.
Okay, sorry. There you go.
I think it's A.
A, many citizens move out of Ramford but are replaced by new citizens from other cities. So it's Ramford's population increase results in a corresponding increase in other statistics. So as we talked about, right? So big box stores opening up, you know, how can you really say that that causes more crime? Right? There's not enough information there. And the fact that there's more big box stores opening up. Kate, we're working with social studies data. And we're gonna just about finished up here. We're on question 6. So, right, we can't just say that. What else is happening? There's a bunch of big box stores opening. we know that the population is probably increasing, right? We've got sort of a booming town, a booming city, things are going on. Well, we also know in those cases, other not so great things are happening, like an increase in crime. So, you know, if you have a city of 10,000 people, you typically are going to have less crime than a city of, you know, 150,000, 200, a million people, right? There's going to be more crime. So there's the confounding idea, right? There's just not enough information to say these things are correlate or there's a cause between big box stores and more crime. Population is going to confound that idea. Yeah, a more logical explanation is that Brantford is growing during the same time frame, and more people means more crime. Okay, just a second here. Okay, so what is the approximate mean percentage of young people not living at home from 1990 to 2009? So back to our bar graph, and I'll just go ahead and I'll answer this one because it takes a little bit of math here. So mean percentage of young people not living at home from 1990 to 2009. So what we'd have to do here is take those two numbers, right? So our mean percentage would be, was it 1990 to 2009? Okay, yeah, 1990 to 2009. So we take our three numbers, right? 67 plus 69 plus 42, and then we divide by 3, and we're going to get 59%, right? That is the average, that is the mean percentage of young people not living at home in that time span from 1990 to 2009. And, you know, just to think about, you know, sort of checking your math there, the highest number we have is 69. So you know the number is not going to be greater than 69, right? It's got to fall under that. And the lowest number is 42. So it's not going to be 25. It can't be below, it can't be higher than 69. It can't be lower than 42. So that leaves us either with basically 52 or 59. But always do the math. But you know, that's a good way to sort of check to make sure that you're in the ballpark. So our three numbers added together, divided by 3, and we get 59. 67 plus 69 plus 42. That is our mean average, right? Mean, meaning the average of a set of numbers.
Congratulations.
So yeah,
You've
I think
earned
we
a
have time
perfect
to
score in this unit.
more. As I mentioned,
And I use the word earned because it's your hard.
It's going to be a short lesson on spelling. So the last one for Essential Ed, and we have reasoning and social studies. So this is another reason I didn't want to do another RLA reading lesson today, because we're covering this, and the next RLL reading lesson is going to be sort of related to, you know, more reasoning like this. It's going to kind of cover some same ground. So let's take a look here. And as I get started, I got to send a text really quick, so bear with me. Okay. Looks like I have a dentist appointment tomorrow. That's why I'm confirming my appointment. So, okay. Okay, so reasoning and social studies. Here we go. Okay, so some familiar information again. So we're looking at a way to summarize the claim of Domenico Argentieri's argument. So opposing views on Mars signals, right? So we talked about this. So one Italian scientist thinks that they are possible. Another calls report scandalous, from the New York Times, January 29th, 1920. So this coming from Rome, Italy, January 29th. Interplanetary communication as suggested by mysterious waves recently caught by wireless plants through the world is not a subject for ridicule, says Professor Domenico Argentieri, the widely known scientist. He asserts it is possible to send messages from the Earth to other members of the sun's family because ether will convey electric waves as readily as air. And ether, by the way, was just this fictional material, gas, whatever you want to call it, that they thought that was in space at the time. It doesn't actually exist. These mysterious communications, he said, today make one think of spiritualistic phenomena, which have been observed. However, scientists believe they are due not to mechanical, but to intelligent forces. Florence, January 29th. Father Alfani, director of the Zeminian Observatory in this city, said today that to spread rumors relative to interchange of messages between planets was absolutely scandalous. What has been observed at wireless stations at London and New York, he declared, has been caused by atmospheric discharges, which have always interfered with radio communication. He added that William Marconi, inventor of the wireless telegraph system, should sue for libel the man who interviewed him recently and quoted him as believing that faint signals picked up wireless stations might come from sources outside the Earth. A possibility that the undecipherable, this, Nautica, is reasoning in social studies unit quiz. It's the very last quiz. And did I assign this? Let me double check, make sure I assigned it. Oh, yeah, it is assigned. Okay. Let me just get back in here real quick. All right, so where were we? Yeah, quoted him as believing that faint signals picked up wireless stations might come from sources outside the Earth. A possibility that the undecipherable signals which have recently crept into wireless messages originate from some other worlds is accepted by J. Lording Arnold, professor of physics at New York University. While agreeing that the signals may be due to some extraordinary condition in the higher atmosphere, Professor Arnold does not entirely discard the supposition that the queer notes are probable efforts of another world to attempt communication with the Earth. The latter explanation, he says, is mere supposition at best. Okay, so the first part there is Domenico Argentieri's argument. So let's see, Kate, you're with us now. What is Domenico Argentieri's argument?
I'm reading through.
What was that?
I said I'm reading through. Can I please see the passage again?
Oh, I'm sorry. So looking at Domenico Argentieri, make it a little easier there. So here, so widely known scientist asserts it is possible to send messages from the Earth to other members of the sun's family because either will convey electric waves as readily as air. And then these mysterious communications, he said today, make one think of spiritualistic phenomena, which have been observed. However, scientists believe they are due not to mechanical, but to intelligent forces.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back, please. I think it might be A, intelligent forces and this.
Intelligent forces sent the signals by transmitting electrical waves through the ether. Yeah, that's basically his argument, right? Or his claim that he's making there, that this is coming from outer space and is likely from some type of intelligent, life out there. So yeah, A is the correct answer. Yeah, and then it shows you here, right? So he claims that electric waves can be sent through something he calls ether. And then in 4, in the other sentence, he claims the signals are likely from intelligent forces. And then which of these claims has the least support based on the information within the passage? Mariama, what do you think here? What has the least support?
C.
C. Expert opinion 1920 was not in agreement over the nature of Mars signals. It's actually A. So scientific consensus agrees that the signals originate from space. So we do have, Argentieri saying that, and then we have another scientist here at the bottom, J. Lording Arnold, agreeing that the signals may be due to some extraordinary condition, but there's not a lot of support there, right? So there's just those two sort of ideas here, which would not be like a scientific consensus. So A, yeah, scientists would have to be in agreement. And basically this is, this news article is showing that there's disagreement. 2 of the scientists quoted in this article are inclined to think that the signals originate from Earth's own atmosphere, but we do not have, what will be a scientific consensus. And okay, intelligent forces. So which answer best describes the opinion that the signals are from intelligent forces? Delasha, we have intelligent forces here.
Okay, since then, is it C?
C, so it's A. So there's no evidence provided that supports in support of intelligent forces, right? It's an untested claim. And again, untested claims, there's nothing wrong with an untested claim, but then you need to test it. But here, that's, right? So like B, Professor Argentieri prefers the intelligent forces theory. That's a matter of his preference. That's his opinion. C says Argentieri sees the intelligent forces theory as important. That is a priority for him, right? But maybe not for everybody else. Since the opinion is based on scientific consensus, the opinion is a reasoned judgment. No, it is not based on scientific consensus. But here, there's no evidence provided in support of intelligent forces. So that's an untested claim. And of course, we deal with untested claims all the time. You're all parents, especially with babies. When they're crying, why are they crying? Are they hungry? Are they tired? Do they need their diaper changed? Right? Those are all untested claims until you actually determine what that child needs. Right? And then you immediately, change the diaper, or you get a bottle, or you lay them down for a nap. But until you do that, right, that's that's an untested claim of why are they fussy, or why are they crying, and which answer best reflects the possible fact expressed in sections 6 and 7. So this is the Kurt opinion again. So I'm writing in response to the article, New Transit System Plan. The proposed Kurt system might as well be called the dirt system. Why? Because so much traffic will be stuck in the mud once this system is implemented. Traffic on Carmel Road is already horrendous. How inappropriate that a transit system will cause nothing but traffic headaches. Does the Kurt system remove car lanes on our most crowded road? It sure does. Does it provide more much needed parking? It sure does not. Does it help businesses? That's a resounding no. My cousin owns a business in Maryville City where they finished building a new transit system last March. Her business has dropped 6%. The reason I'm writing is to highlight what's mentioned at the end of the article. You can go to the City Council website to read the proposal, find all the facts for yourself, and by all means, call, email, and write to City Council. Show up at the meeting in the same numbers that you show up on Carmel Road on a Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock. The building should be bumper to bumper with concerned citizens who drive this route daily, giving their perspective on the transit system. So focusing on 6 and 7. Does the Kurt system remove car lanes on our most crowded road? It sure does. Levon. So which answer best reflects the possible fact expressed in section 6 and 7? A. So if the Kurt plan calls for the removal of lanes from Carmel Road, yes, this could be an empirical fact. So, right. So as it says, the Kurt system is a transit plan. I remember empirical evidence and empirical fact is something that's observable. So it should be a simple matter to determine whether or not the plan calls for the removal of lanes simply by reading the plan. Right? So a fact based on observation is an empirical fact. It's something observable. And then, which of the following is the best way to characterize this text? So back to the Salem witch trials, just read it. So we probably don't need to discuss that, but right, we have this telling of the story here. So Nautica. How do we characterize this text?
So it's not primary source because it's not coming from the person itself. So right, it's secondary. Let me see. This is a secondary source and opinion likely based on historical accounts. This is a secondary source and a first person historical account. Let me skim over the passage really quick.
Sure.
Is it the secondary source and the first person historical account?
The secondary source and opinion. And this is, you know, the way they use first person historical account and stuff, it kind of, I feel like that's kind of confusing, right? If it's a secondary source, it can't be a first person account, right? It can be an account that is compiled of primary sources. But the other thing to sort of keep in mind, a secondary source often offers some type of opinion when it comes to history, right? You know, if it's a news account or something like that, there might be relying on primary sources. But when it comes to things like historical topics, political science and stuff like that, a secondary source will also offer some type of opinion. Of course, their opinion there is basically talking about the lack of due process in those, you know, in those trials. So B answer here. Right. The author gives no indication of living during the time of the Salem witch trials. This is a secondary source. This is not written from firsthand experience, so this would be considered an opinion. So again, I think they kind of confuse that a little bit. You know, I mean, a firsthand experience or firsthand account is typically, that's a primary source. But you can write about firsthand experiences. You can write about the account and give a historical account of something. So I think they just kind of try to oversimplify that a little bit. Okay, two passages here. Okay, the one, again, same one about signals coming from space. Two, we'll read that one though. So talking to Mars. So sort of a response to this idea presented by Argentieri, right? This idea that these signals are coming from space. Appears, see, that's January 29th. The original one, oh, okay, it also appeared January 29th. All right, so in view of the statements accredited to, is that Googly, I don't even know how to spell Marconi's. I didn't realize Marconi's first name was so weird. Marconi, that wireless messages are being received on the Earth from some other planet, and the assertion of Dr. Charles P. Steinmetz that the cost of sending a wireless telegraph message to the planet Mars might be in the neighborhood of $1 billion. The Sperry Gyroscope Company of Brooklyn yesterday made public a plan upon which its engineers have been engaged and which they believe may solve the question with but a comparatively small expense. Elmer A. Sperry, the head of the company and the inventor of the Sperry gyroscope and other mechanical contrivances used by the Allies in the recent war, believes with his engineers that a message may be sent to Mars by means of a grouping of a great number of Sperry searchlights and combining their great power in the tremendous beam. In one tremendous beam. The Sperry searchlight can develop more than 1 billion candle power. The entire question is one of transmission of energy, said Mr. Sperry. The combined power of 150 or 200 of our searchlights would equal the light of a star of the 7th magnitude. And if the inhabitants of Mars, admitting that there are inhabitants, have advanced sufficiently to have knowledge of the use of a telescope, the light would be easily discernible by them. So how does passage 2 extend the information from passage 1, which is the one on radios, radio transmissions? Let's see, Delasha, how about you try this one? How does those two relate to each other?
Is it D?
B as in boy?
D
as in dog?
Yes.
Okay. See, passage 1 is about radio signals from space. Passage 2 is about light signals. So that is basically this summary of the two. But we want a little more as far as how are they, does it extend? Well, wait a minute. Contact. No, so yeah, it's B, let's see, sees the signals as possible alien contact, and passage 2 considers a way that Earth might respond. Right. So while they're, the D there doesn't actually offer, why they might be related or how exactly one extends the other. Passage 1, right, is saying that, oh, we might be getting, messages from Mars. And passage 2 extends that by showing us how that we may be able to respond to them. So B. Yeah. And okay, last one. Back to our letter to the editor. And specifically, so he says, which answer best describes the opinion that Kurt will be nothing but traffic headaches. So what information here best describes that, Levon? B. So it's A. So I can see that since Carmel Road already needed help with traffic congestion, this opinion is a priority. But a little more specifically, right? So looking at the opinion here, so that could be a hypothesis because it is something that we could test, right? Since traffic is something that can be measured over time, this opinion is actually a hypothesis. It's not very diplomatic. This guy uses some strong language there that sort of affects his tone and sort of, his message. He may actually not convince as many people because of the strong language that he uses. But the fact that nothing but traffic headaches, while it's vague, you could measure basically traffic flow, traffic backups and stuff like that. So it would be a hypothesis. Yeah, traffic worsens after Kurt is finished. The author's hypothesis will be proven. It's just the way he states it as a headache, right? That is not, that's not necessarily a measurable term. If he used a little better wording in that, I think we'd have it would be a little easier to see that it's a hypothesis. Okay, that is the end.
Congratulations. You've earned a perfect score on this unit. And I used the word earned.
Any questions? A lot of ground that we covered today, but any questions on any of those unit reviews? I think we got a few questions along the way, hopefully cleared up any issues there. Any more questions? Okay, so with social studies starting Monday, we're going to start diving into history. It's more just kind of lecture based. I don't really have questions or anything planned for you guys as of yet. That will come back around when we get into some more unit review and, well, not just unit review, but sort of reviewing for the test and things like that. But Monday, just need to pay attention and, start getting some historical information and context for some of the stuff that we've already talked about. We're going to deal with a lot that we actually haven't even talked about yet that is definitely fair game to show up on your GED test, or at least be the sort of basis for some of that information. So if there's no questions, language arts, it's going to be another short one. So I didn't really, have an issue taking social studies a little longer today. It's going to be another spelling one. So with that said, let's go ahead and take about a 10-minute break. We'll meet back at 1:50 for some language arts. All right, bye-bye.